Mark Driscoll. Does that name bring back any memories? Yeah, well, this week, Mark Driscoll got himself in the news again after going after the Jezebel spirit. Stay tuned. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another week of eXplain, where we engage the culture from a biblical perspective in a manner which glorifies God. Well, this week, this was an interesting week. There was quite a few things that happened. One of the things that happened, which this is something that we're going to be talking about today, is Mark Driscoll found himself back in the news. And a little bit of background on Mark Driscoll, if you weren't familiar with him already. Mark Driscoll, he was big. He was bigger years ago than he is now. He was a pastor of a church called Mars Hill. It was a church up in Washington State. Basically, he started out on what seemed to be the right track, at least generally speaking. I wouldn't say I agreed with like everything he did early on, but it just seemed like, I guess, over time, I'm not quite sure what happened, what got to him, but there were some things that he did that just weren't the best, I guess I would say. Not exactly what I would do as a pastor in ministry. There was a podcast that you might be familiar with, put out by a platform, or I guess it's just like, it might be a magazine or something, called Christianity Today. We've reacted to some of their content in the past. I am not a big fan of Christianity Today. But I will say, from a production level, or on a production level, this podcast that they put out about Mark Driscoll was very good. You know, the music and the storytelling and stuff kind of made you, feel like you were invested in it. This podcast was called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. It was one of the most popular, if not the most popular podcast in Christianity for a long time, and I'm shocked that was the case, but there you have it. But anyway, the right, of course. So you have Mark Driscoll over here, who's doing a lot of things that, again, I would not recommend. He started out, at least theologically, claiming that he was a Calvinist of some sort, which is this is what I'm talking about. Like that, I'm like, okay, I agree with that, but I don't agree with the way that you're putting that into practice, even early on. I don't agree with the way that you're putting that into practice. Don't really agree with the way that you're handling people in your church. Anyway, so that would be one example, I guess. Like I said, that early on, it seemed like he started out good, at least doctrinally, but still, even early on, wasn't a huge fan of the way that he, acted in ministry and stuff like that. But anyway, so you have Driscoll over here on one side, not really a good representation of what a conservative Christian pastor looks like, right? And then you have Christianity Today on this side, who I would say is not conservative at all. They're not conservative. It's funny. John Cooper, I think it is, has this line where he's like, he, instead of calling it Christianity Today, he calls it Christianity Yesterday, which I think is pretty funny. But anyway, that's besides the point. You have Christianity Today over here on this other side, and they're not conservative, I would say. And you have them basically pointing at Driscoll and saying, this is an example of what conservative Christianity gets you and where it gets you. And I'm sitting here going, well, okay, Driscoll is not a good example of a conservative Christian pastor. I mean, if you really want to look at a conservative Christian pastor, then look at John MacArthur. All right, look at Stephen Lawson. Look at Doug Wilson. Look at people who have been doing it for a long time and have a faithful ministry, right? Don't go, after this one guy whose church basically collapsed in on him, and then go and make a podcast about it and claim that he's, a representation of conservative Christianity. I mean, that's just not realistic. It's not true. Anyway, I do believe that there were some places where Christianity Today definitely pushed their limits, pushed the boundaries on that podcast. I don't agree with a majority of their commentary on conservative Christianity as a whole. As for their recounting of the story of what happened at Mars Hill itself, hey, I can't say heads or tails on that because I wasn't there. I didn't interview the people, so that's beyond me. That's beyond my ability to comment on. But anyway, there's a little bit of background on Mark Driscoll. Mark Driscoll is currently a pastor of a different church in Arizona. Maybe we can spend some time another day talking about the rise and fall of Mars Hill podcast, but that's not why we're here today. Why we're here today is because over the weekend, Mark Driscoll went to a men's conference. And at this men's conference, they had a guy who was claiming to be a sword swallower. Never even heard of that before, but just off the bat, that sounds sketchy to me to have a guy like that performing at a men's conference. Just weird, right? But apparently he was also some kind of I don't know, he was some kind of like stripper or something, and he did like this really weird I don't know, even like suggestive type of dance where like he ripped his shirt off and stuff in front of men at a men's conference. That's the weird thing to me. Another guy pointed this out too, is that, like, who made the decision that who was making the decision that thought that a male behaving like that would be interesting for men at a men's conference. I don't understand. I don't get that. Anyway, so you have this post here by Colin Rugg, I think gives us some background. He says, new Pastor Mark Driscoll gets kicked off stage at a men's conference after he calls out Pastor John Lindell for allowing a demonstration from a male stripper. This incident happened at the Stronger Men's Conference in Springfield, Missouri. So after Vegas stripper and sword swallower Alex Magala did a performance with his shirt off, Driscoll got on stage and condemned the performance. Lindell then told Driscoll he was out of line and kicked him off the stage while citing Matthew 18. And then Rugg just ends with bizarre. Bizarre. Yeah, I agree. And the interesting thing about this all, and I'll just go to this now, before we go any further. Protestia posted a follow-up video where basically they were like, this is what they said, follow-up video where John Lindell and Mark Driscoll returned to the stage after being booted. Lindell heaps praises on Driscoll, and Driscoll apologizes for calling out the way he did and should have gotten permission. Okay, I mean, this is there was a guy, Owen Strahan. He posted something about like, hey, who cares what's going on in the, like what in the world is going on in the deep dark corners of, or in the fringes of Christianity or something like that. I don't have the wording exactly right. I'll put it up on the screen. There you go. You have it up on the screen so you can see what Strand said. But anyway, it's just funny, and I think that he's right in what he said, that basically this is not the center of Christianity. It's certainly not the center of biblical Christianity. I mean, just flaring off at each other like that. I mean, come on, right? A bunch of people, had some stuff to say about this, and I'll just do that and set the table before I start talking about it. Phil Johnson, who he is, we've talked about him before. He's over at Grace Community Church, John MacArthur's church. He says, when you have offended Mark Driscoll with a display of quasi-masculine bravado, you have truly crossed a line from which there may be no return. It's true. I mean, look, Mark Driscoll has been at a lot of different other conferences, which I think for a lot of people would really prick their conscience. And Mark Driscoll has just kind of gone with it, just kind of done his thing. So if you're triggering something in Mark Driscoll's head, I mean, you're going pretty far, right? You have a sword swallower on the stage at a men's conference ripping off his shirt and doing like some kind of like seductive dance. I mean, come on, right? I don't know. I'm like flabbergasted at who in the world thought that was a good idea. I don't know. This is from Chris Hohnholz. He says, and this is where it gets interesting, because on the surface, if you didn't know who Mark Driscoll was and you didn't know what he said, and we're going to get into both of those things. If you didn't know who Mark Driscoll was and you didn't know what he said, then this would be like, on the surface, it would be like, okay, maybe why is he at this conference? Did he know that was going to happen? But good on him for calling out this guy, right? But that's before you know who Mark Driscoll is and what he said. So you know what? I might as well just get into it now. So basically, the way that Driscoll addressed this, and you're going to be able to click on the video in the link in the description, so you can go ahead and go watch that. Again, as normal, I link all the posts from X that I'm referencing in the video down below. Anyway, just for your reference, so you can go watch the videos, go do the research yourself, like I did. Anyway, you'll be able to see in that initial clip that basically the stuff that Driscoll says is basically he says that the Jezebel spirit has already been here, and what is the Jezebel spirit? I don't know. There's not really anything in the Bible that talks about a Jezebel spirit. I'm sure some people would point to that text in Revelation, but that doesn't say anything about a Jezebel spirit. It just says that you tolerate the woman Jezebel, which clearly that's just a name for someone who's causing trouble in that specific church. That part of Revelation is written to. But anyway, he says that the Jezebel spirit has been here, which, if I was going to call out wickedness from a stage, I would never say that. I would try to say something a little more biblical than that. Also, he says something about our God is not proud. He does not ascend. He's humble. He descends, right? And of course, I understand what Driscoll is saying, that we have a God that is different from the false gods of other religions, in that Christ came down to earth to be with us. But here's the problem. You can't make a distinction between Christ descending and ascending, because guess what? He ascended, and now he's ruling and reigning. And so again, when you're trying to call out something for being wrong, and then you also are wrong on top of that, you're making various errors in your calling out of that thing. Not a great look. Not a great look. I wouldn't have used that language either. And then, of course, you have Driscoll's background. Which some would even say that he's not that he's not qualified to even be standing up there because of the way that things were left at Mars Hill. And just because of the way that he seems to be, I guess, according to reports, he continues to behave in Arizona. He seems to have maybe toned down his behavior a tiny bit, but that's just on the large scale, right? You're not seeing as many clips of him out there anymore and stuff like that. He's not up until recently. He hasn't. There haven't really been any clips of him like really circulating for too long, at least not as much as they used to. But even if you talk to people behind the scenes, who were at the church that he pastors in Arizona, or who were at the church that he pastors in Arizona, there's a lot of really questionable stuff going on even now, and has been. So anyway, let's get to Chris Hohnholz's post, because I think he really gets at something important. He says, "I know everyone wants to give Mark Driscoll props for getting something right at the moment. I can't do that. He's a man who's unqualified for the pastorate. He's not repented of what he did at Mars Hill. He fled church discipline and preaches even though he no longer qualifies under the requirements of 1 Timothy and Titus. Just because he got one thing right, something that should have been obvious to anyone with a functioning brain cell, doesn't mean I will give him any props. Blind mice find cheese and broken clocks are right twice a day. So a man who is deeply in error may still stumble across the truth. Doesn't mean we should give him the time of day." Okay, so Hohnholz is getting at something that people have been doing. Driscoll has garnered a lot of praise for what he did. Even if you watch the clip, you'll see people screaming and cheering for him. And then when he got booted off the stage by the pastor of that church, they were booing the pastor and everything like that. So yeah, that's really what Hohnholz is addressing. And then you have Justin Peters, who says something pretty similar. Mark Driscoll should neither be praised nor defended. He is manifestly unqualified and disqualified from being in ministry. The little stunt he pulled for which he is garnering praise was just that, a stunt. It was self-aggrandizing, I think, showboating stunt that was done at a heretical wackadoodle church. Lord willing, I'll have a video explaining all of this posted later today, and that post was posted on Monday, and sure enough, Peters does currently have a video out about Driscoll. I did see it. I didn't watch it, but I saw that it came out. So there you have it. That is the reaction of people. Just what people have to say. So my commentary, kind of my thoughts. If I had to put my thoughts in a post on X, which hey, maybe I should, maybe I will. Was he right? Was Driscoll right to call this out? Right? Was Driscoll right to call out that horrible, even demonic, depending on how you look at it, demonic performance that happened before him on the stage? Was Driscoll right to call that out? Well, if he was a normal guy doing a normal call out, yes. But Driscoll is not a normal guy doing a normal call out. This was not a normal rebuke. It was theologically inaccurate, as we already said, and this is Driscoll. Okay, and this is the part that makes me wonder, and I'm just putting this out there. It makes me wonder how much of this was genuine. Okay, I want to say that carefully, but I can't get around the fact that that something is amiss here, because if you look at the clip, Driscoll says that he was up from 1 o'clock in the morning, crying out, praying for this church or these people that were there. And he says, he's talking about how the Jezebel spirit has been here, and what are we gonna do? Oh no, right? That's kind of what he was getting across. That's the message that was really being communicated by him. And this, I know a lot of people have already pointed this out, but we have a post here from Pastor Mark Driscoll, okay, where he says, this was after, okay, this was after the whole episode where he called out this church. He says, "Passive men let evil run rampant. Join me as I unpack how the spirit of Ahab make men passive, fearful, and weak, and what you can do to overcome this spirit." And then the book is New Days, Old Demons, How the Evil Jezebel Spirit is Destroying America and What You Need to Know to Fight Back. Okay, and then you've got Virgil Walker, love Virgil. But he says, wait a minute. Now, did he? He wouldn't. Would he? He couldn't. Could he? Now he has a book ready to go on the subject. Interesting. I just can't believe this. I wonder who okayed this. Who said that this was a good idea? Okay, now you can even try to give Driscoll the benefit of the doubt, okay, and say that, oh, well, Driscoll just said this, he just went up on the stage and freaked out on these people just because he was already thinking about the Jezebel spirit, and maybe his talk was going to be about the Jezebel spirit, and so he had to tie it in. Well, you know what? Even if that was the case, I don't know who in PR decided that it was a good idea for him, right after that, to put out this advertisement about his book, and now he's promoting his book all over the place. And you know what? That scenario is highly unlikely. Okay, the likely scenario is that, as other people have said, that the likely scenario is that Driscoll was simply just saying this. Knowing that he had this, this book ready, queued up to start circulating all over the place. And so even in that, that makes you wonder again if he's just back to his old performative ways. Really does make you wonder. But anyway. Actually, one other thing. There's one other wacky thing, crazy wacky thing that happened here. And I really feel like I need to address this too before we go on. So Protestia, again, coming in clutch. They posted a statement from the Sword Swallower about Mark Driscoll, because of course the Sword Swallower got mad, he got offended or whatever. But this is what Protestia says. Full statement from Alex Magala, the Sword Swallower, performing at the center of Mark Driscoll's controversy. In response to recent criticisms of Stronger, looks like that was a typo. In response to recent criticisms of Stronger Men's Conference produced by James River Church, I feel compelled to clarify the context and intention behind my specialty act. My performance, which some have controversially likened to inappropriate entertainment, is deeply rooted in a historical and cultural tradition that dates back over 1,200 years and has since become a respected discipline showcasing human strength and agility. I don't know what culture he's talking about, because I have never heard of swallowing swords in this culture before, all right? So it must be another culture. And a lot of times, anyway, I'm not even going to entertain that. Pastor Mark Driscoll's remarks about my act failed to recognize the difference between a male striptease and a stunt performance rooted in art and sport. Only an uninformed person would draw a comparison between my act and an inappropriate performance. I feel like this danger act is perfect for the Stronger Men's Conference and provides inspiration to the audience and permission for them to reach new heights of what's possible in their lives. My mentor, Dan Meyer, is a leader of Sword Swallowers Association International, a multiple Guinness World Record holder in sword swallowing, and just so happens to be a member of Pastor Mark Driscoll's home congregation. Are you kidding me? Oh man. That's bad. That's bad. Dan says it wasn't a raunchy male pole dance or stripper performance. Alex is the top of his field as a master in the classical 12th century martial arts acrobatic discipline called Chinese pole acrobatics, where he performed at the Olympics. This is way different than a male stripper. It's like comparing a classical ballet with a striptease. No comparison. The convention hired Alex because the theme was strong men, and Alex is the best at what he does. I am a Christian and have always aimed to use my talents to inspire and entertain audiences in a way that respects my faith. The act in question was designed to be a celebration of physical human achievements and is aligned with the James River Church's purpose in bringing others into the light of Christ. It is essential to approach such performances with an understanding of their intention rather than reducing them to mere entertainment. Okay, well, here's the problem. Did anybody know about that? I doubt that anybody knew that was what he was doing, first of all. That's number one, okay? Because Driscoll didn't even know what was going on, all right? And he was obviously there. He saw what happened. And second of all, here's the other thing, right? This just tells us, this proves to us why when you get a bunch of people together under a roof, all right, the important thing is, as Paul says when he's speaking to the church in Corinth, what does he say? I determined to know nothing among you except Christ and him crucified. Not the guy hanging upside down on the pole swallowing the sword. Not the guy who runs up on the stage and freaks out on this guy and then says he has the Jezebel spirit, and then he's putting out he puts out a post about a book about the Jezebel spirit the next day. And that's all theatrics. That's all just cheap substitutes. I mean, man, if any of these people really understood the richness and the fullness of the gospel, man, you could spend a whole conference just talking about the gospel. And that's the thing. People do that, right? I mean, you ever seen the Shepherds Conference, right? Ever seen the G3 Conference? I mean, these people, they spend a whole weekend talking about the gospel, all right? Determining to know nothing among each other except Christ and him crucified. That's really the way to go on this thing, people. That's the way to go. All right? And when you lend yourself to crazy theatrics like this, or like I saw something that church last year apparently had like some kind of like American Tank show thing. in the same time slot as the sword swallower was this year. So I mean, they're obviously and actually Ruslan, who he's a YouTuber. He does a lot of cultural commentary and stuff. He actually pointed out that this church, I think what is it called? James River Church? Is that's what it's called? Yeah. James River Church. This is the same church. I don't know if you remember the Show Me the Toes situation, where apparently there was a lady who claimed that she had toes that grew back, and then like everybody was like, okay, well, let's see them. And then the guy was like, the guy got up on the stage and he was like, no, I'm not gonna show you, but I'm just gonna tell you that it happened, and you have to believe me because I'm trying to protect her privacy or something. I don't know. Anyway, if you remember that whole controversy, this was the same church that this happened at. So they have a history of this showboaty type of stuff. I was just talking to someone last night. Actually, Steve, you know Steve. I was talking to Steve about this last night, about how, it's ridiculous how people think that this is ultimately going to attract people in such a way where their souls are going to be saved. I mean, here's the thing. We have to understand that God is the one who does the work. God is the one who does the work. The Holy Spirit is the one who does the work, right? I mean, even Jesus says, no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. Okay, so if we really believe that, if we really believe that God is the one who does the work in the person's heart, then why do we feel like we need to jump over hoops and jump over hurdles to march giraffes down the center aisle, which I heard that was happening in another church, or march zebras down the center aisle, or have a live zoo, or have a sword swallower, or have some live tank, or whatever that was, or even as a pastor to like go showboating all over the place. I mean, if we really believe that God is the one who does the work and that he works through his word, man, I didn't see anything about the word of God in any of those things. And that's the thing. God works through his word. The word is sharper than the two-edged sword, right? And it's God's word. It's the gospel that changes people's hearts. And even where you think about the word being sharper than the two-edged sword. It says it pierces, it cuts, right? And of course, it's ironic that I'm talking about that with the sword swallower. I didn't mean to do that, but no connection there. Don't make any weird connections. But it's God's word that is active. That's the thing that works. And so if we really are there, like these people claim, with the desire to see people saved and to see people changed, then you got to preach the word. You got to know nothing except Christ crucified, right? That's Christ and him crucified. That's what you got to do. No showboating, no screaming at each other and shouting each other off the stage, or having all these crazy things. None of that. Preach the word. Preach the word. That's what I have to say about that. All right, well, I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time.